Hello! So, welcome to the second bonus video of SEGA Saturn month, because I'm in a Saturn mood. I'm in a big old Saturn mood, and I figured today I would just talk about all of my repro games. So, if you have a Saturn, you can get this thing called Pseudo Saturn, which you need a little cartridge called an Action Replay to utilise. That basically lets you play repro games, or reproduction games, or games that, quite frankly, are just too ludicrously expensive to waste money on. Although, in some cases, I have wasted money on, and that's okay. So the bulk of these I got from a company called, well, not a company, a website that was called Resurrection Games. I think another one was from a guy called SEGA Mecha Mods or something back in the day. But I have these games. I have these games legally. It is fine. These are just backups. No, these are, yeah, you're not supposed to say about reproduction games, but here we are. They are reproductions, which is okay. That's fine. Because a lot of these are just too bloody expensive to buy otherwise, or they are English translated. Starting with a Stahl. Now, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't quite expecting this to show up looking as good and as legit as it does, because the rest were just in DVD cases, but he was like, oh, do you want the Japanese version? Now, I'd read the Japanese version has a cheat for infinite lives, which makes that game considerably more playable, and it does, which is great. They removed it in the American version, which is fine, but I'm going to pick up a legit copy of this down the line, I think, because I just really, really like the style. It's a gorgeous game with freaking amazing music. There's a guy on here called Saturnology on YouTube. He did a video on this with a bit of music from the game that has stuck in my head for years. I think it's called The Crystal Caverns. And yeah, Saturnology was actually a big part of what turned me on to buying this game in particular. And I love a star. It's just legitimately very good. Unfortunately, none of these will play in the Polymega, which is fine. That's why you need the Pseudo Saturn. Because if you don't have the Pseudo Saturn, you're not playing repro games on it. But moving on, here's a weird one. Scud, the Disposable Assassin. This was an American-only release, I think. And yeah, it's a strange combination of side-scrolling platformer and light gun. So if you've got a Sega Saturn light gun, which I do, you point it at the TV and you can switch between the two modes. I think this is based on a comic. I could be wrong, but yeah, Scud the Disposable Assassin. You play as Scud. You kill dudes. You're a robot assassin purchased from a vending machine, apparently, which is just really weird. Yeah. Strange game. Good game. Weird. Very weird. But, you know, surreality just got funky. Whatever that means. Surreality. Bit of a stretch. So, I think it was Dreamcast Enjoyer, a guy I've watched a fair bit of, talked about Bulk Slash. Bulk Slash is a bit of a mech game, crossed over with a dating simulator, which I didn't know about. I didn't know about the dating simulator part of it beforehand, which is fine. But they have just done a fans translation patch for this, which means this copy is now redundant, entirely in Japanese. But that makes the game infinitely more playable. Just honestly, infinitely more playable. So much fun as well. Like really solid mech combat. With kind of third-person shooter controls that aren't garbage, which is a big deal for the time. Very big deal. But yeah, good game. Very good game. Would heartily recommend. Here's two. So now we're going to just kind of start getting into the stuff that's just simply too expensive to own. It's just simply too expensive. But this isn't an example of that, which is Atlantis. Atlantis is a game very similar to Myst, although considerably uglier and just Yeah, you actually go to Atlantis. This game series kept going for a long time, though. I think I have Atlantis 3 on the PS2, of all places. And I bought 2 Beyond Atlantis on the PC from a charity shop a few weeks ago. It's a bit nuts. But they're not the point and clicks I'm interested in. These are. So, yeah, Terry Pratchett's Discworld. There were 2 games released for the Saturn, and then a third one called Discworld Noir, which I don't think is by the same developers, who were Perfect Entertainment. Right there, Perfect Entertainment. I don't think they were the same, but I think they were actually written by Terry Pratchett, based on his classic Discworld fantasy comedy novels. Really, really good. Hard as balls. Because they prescribe to that kind of 90s point-and-click adventure game logic where nothing makes fucking sense. Thank you, Myst and Atlantis. You're both bloody guilty of that, but this in particular, Jesus, kind of falls into the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and Starship Titanic levels of just difficult, for the sake of being difficult. Like, they're opaque. The puzzles are completely opaque, very annoying. But the dialogue is hilarious. And all voice acted, which is great, even better. But those games are just simply too much. They're like 60, 70, 80 quid. Not as bad as Dragon Force, though. I owned Dragon Force. That is a horrible disc that I just have not looked at. Look at that. Garbage. Look at it. Terrible. Oh well. Yeah, I owned Dragon Force maybe 12 years ago. 10 years ago. About 10 years ago. I owned the original Dragon Force. I bought it for 60 quid. And then I traded it in because I was a poor university student at the time. And I was like, oh, I can't afford to keep this. It's too expensive for a game that's fucking terrible. It's not terrible. I just didn't know how to play it properly. And now all I can get is this bloody cheap reproduction copy. But that also means I have access to the sequel, which didn't come out in English. Thank you, Sega. That being said, I don't think this one came out in English either. Damn, I don't think this is an actual English copy. Helped I haven't played it. But, yeah, you know. Strategy game. Kind of a strategy RPG, but, like, larger scale. More in common with, I want to say, Heroes of Might and Magic than, say, something like Fire Emblem. That, and it helps it's kind of real-time, sort of. It's fine. From what I've played of it, again, it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly serviceable. Would heartily recommend if it wasn't hundreds of pounds. Hundreds of pounds. Well, these next 2 are fun because I bought them after the fact. Dark Savior. Kind of a weird action RPG where you control our buff old friend here, whose name completely escapes me, which is completely hilarious. Yeah, plays your big old meat-bound muscle boy there. Found it for about 20 quid in a game shop near me, and thought, yeah, I'll buy it. I played the Repro version, might as well, and it was fine. It's good. Saturn Bomberman though, this I played so much of this Repro copy that I went, you know what? I want the actual game. I want the actual game. I want a game of Bomberman where I can play with 10 bloody people at once. 10 people at once. It's madness. It's awesome, but it's insane. And you know what? Have a look back. God, that shelf is looking better after I've stripped it off of Saturn games to talk about. I've just been kind of stacking them on my desk without actually putting them back. Very helpful. Ooh, another ludicrously expensive game. Radiant Silvergun. Yeah, you are not finding a cheap copy of this. Ever. It's a bullet hell shooter. Very similar to Death Smiles, Ikaruga, Gunbird. There's another one here. Clio Flying Squadron. With its broken disc. Yeah, no. Both Both very expensive games, and you know what? They're not worth it. They are not worth it at all. They are just way too expensive for what they are. There's also the fact that you play as like a weird bunny girl in... Yeah. No. Radiant Silvergun I'd recommend, though. Very solid. Not my go-to genre, quite frankly. I only bought them because, well, they're bloody expensive. Another game that I'm just genuinely baffled why it is so expensive is Frankenstein Through the Eyes of the Monster with Tim Curry. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, I haven't played this. I need to, because it's Tim Curry starring in a video game, which he then went on to do with one of my absolute favourite strategy games, which is Red Alert 3. And most people on the internet will know him for screaming about space from that particular game. But this has a wonderful line where it's like, the skin was taut like pork butt. It's just... Ugh. It's that line. That line sold me on getting a reproduction copy of this for a £5, because... Yeah. But you know what? I've never actually got round to playing this. What's funny to me, though, is on the back it says, Tim Curry delivers a wonderfully complex and richly constructed role as Dr. Frankenstein. It's Tim Curry. He's a fantastic actor. Genuinely one of the best of his generation. But he's a ham man. He is a man who hams all across every role I've ever seen him in. Every role has always been, oh, Eliza! Very, 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 very weird. And, you know, the fact that the entire game stars him that nobody talks about is absolutely nuts. But that game is 175 quid in CEX. And you know what? As much as I love Tim Curry, not enough to buy that. Not enough to buy that game. No. Oh dear. Just, oh dear. This is a cool one. This was a big set as well. Yeah, Sega Mega Mods, Unleashing the Sega Beast. This was a tenner, and it's a 3-disc? 3-disc, yeah. Of a full English translation of Police Noughts, which is a kind of, as far as I'm aware, a pseudo-successor to a game called Snatcher on the Sega CD. And Snatcher is one of the single most expensive games for that system, and quite frankly, you can just repro it, and it's considerably cheaper. But this Police Noughts was never released in English at all. Anyway, another game by Hideo Kojima, the guy behind Metal Gear Solid. Though, to be fair, I'm kind of seeing why it wasn't released in the West. Probably wouldn't have flown. Which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, kind of a point-and-click detective visual novel thing. Kind of like Snatcher. It's fine. It's merely okay. To be fair, these last few games are just games in Japanese that most people haven't played or nobody really talks about. For example, Elevator Action, which is a game about elevators. I'm not going to elaborate. It's just about elevators. Then we've got the Dungeons & Dragons collection, which has Tower of Doom and Shadow over Mysteria. Now, these games are also released. Oh, cool. I forgot it was a 2-disc. It's a 2-disc. Yeah, this game's expensive. Very. But they re-released these games, I think, recently on Switch from Limited Run, and they released them on 360 back in the day. They're arcade Dungeons & Dragons games, very similar to Golden Axe, from what I'm given to understand. But yeah, bit odd, bit of a weird game. Well, a bit of a weird collection. The fact it wasn't released over here, just very strange. I don't know. I mean, you'd think there'd be enough nerds around to go, oh yeah, I want that. No, apparently. It's my final repro game. And it's not going to be one that anybody is going to know anything about. This is a side-scrolling beat-em-up called Pulirula, which I think stands for Arcade Gears. Pulley Ruler Arcade Gears. It is a side-scrolling beat-em-up that I saw once in a video on YouTube. Couldn't find it for years. Couldn't find this game for years. And when I finally found it, it turned out it was like 300 quid. And I was like, you know what? Repro. Glad I did, because the game isn't great. It's a fine beat-em-up, but I'm not a huge beat-em-up fan. Doesn't explain why I'm trying to get into the Golden Axe series, but here we are. But yeah, it's just kind of, it's very Japanese. It's very Japanese in its peculiarities. Not a bad game, but certainly not one I would spend 300 quid on. Anyways, guys, yeah, that's my repro games for the Sega Saturn. I know, not a video that many people are going to watch, which is fine. Unsure what I'm going to do next week. It will probably be the Panzer Dragoon video that I mentioned earlier in my... What video was that? In the fighting games video. In the Sega Saturn fighting games video, I mentioned I would be doing Panzer Dragoon Saga next week. And talking about the other two Panzer Dragoon games as well, which is what I will be doing, which will be very nice and very exciting. So, anyways, guys, that is me signing off, and I will see you very shortly for week 3 of Sega Saturn Month.